Welcome back to This Week in Film. We're recording on a Saturday for the very first time. Can you believe it? I can't.
Weekend edition.
Yeah, weekend. It's the new show we're doing called Next Week in Film. I'm Nick Panotto, joined as always by Midwest Matt Lauer. Matt, how's
Hello.
it going?
It's going all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. This is
Good.
the weekly podcast where we get together, talk about the movies we've seen over the past week. And Matt, you've been a little under the weather.
I have. I saw a couple movies on the 4th of July, but then I saw a couple movies the other day because I wasn't feeling great.
So
And
I think
I was just home watching videos.
I think what we'll do today is I watched one movie called The Witch. I think we should talk about that first, and then we'll get into Midwest Matt's movie marathon.
Yeah, it's 4 movies. It's not a ton, but
So many movies.
it's enough. Yeah.
So if you haven't seen The Witch, you can just go ahead and turn the podcast off now.
Whoa! Screw Matt's marathon.
Or fast forward to Midwest Matt's movie marathon, the quadruple M.
We're not going to tell you where that starts. So if you come in and we're still talking about a witch a lot, it's probably that first movie.
Right. So I saw the movie The Witch. It's from 2015, which surprised me. I thought it was a more recent movie, but it's a movie that takes place in the 1600s New England with this family that's been banished from, I want to say, Salem, Massachusetts or whatever, just some colony in Pilgrim times, and all the horrible things that happened to them. I really enjoyed this movie. Matt, what did you think about it?
I'm glad I saw it. I walked away really happy with it in some ways and kind of disappointed with it in others.
Yeah.
Mainly the ending, I felt I was expecting something a little bit more interesting. I mean, if you see, now I won't get to the ending in terms of what it is right now, but I'll wait till we get there. But if you see it as just sort of here's what's going on kind of conclusion thing, it's fine. But in terms of it just being really brief and not very fulfilling, that's kind of that left a little bit of a bad taste on top of what otherwise was pretty good.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. The ending, the movie wraps itself up real quick.
Yeah.
So I guess just getting into it, immediately in the movie, it's revealed that there is a witch. like immediately, the movie. With a movie like this, you'd think they'd play up the superstitious Puritan stuff with things going wrong around the farm or whatever, and they blame it on witchcraft and all that stuff. But the movie cuts through all of that stuff and just immediately shows you, hey, there's a witch or a crazy lady who lives in the woods. And the movie starts with such a horrible, there's a baby in the family, and the baby's kidnapped by the witch, and the lady murders the baby and turns it into like a bloodbath, literally a bloodbath that she takes. And the movie just kind of goes from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a pretty intense scene there.
Yeah.
And is it my memory now? As we know from the episode on The Little Mermaid, my memory is pretty good at giving Matt's director's cut versions of movies to me. But is it my memory, or did that scene with her dismembering the baby or whatever? Did it start out with her like cutting its penis off?
No, it looks like she's going to, but then she just kind of, it's like the baby is naked and laying on a table in candlelight, and she like caresses its tummy, and then she puts a knife on its belly, and then it cuts away. And then the next scene is her just using a mortar and pestle and, mortar and pestle?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And, like just kind of grinding up what appears to be baby blood and bones. It's really uplifting.
But it does a good job at like, it doesn't quite just like set the tone for the rest of the movie. Like the rest of the movie's not quite so gory.
Yeah.
But in terms of giving it a tone to start with,
right.
that kind of lingers.
Yeah.
It does a good job of like setting you in an uncomfortable place.
Yeah, it does. And on top of and then the movie cuts back to the family, and it's a father, a wife, a young son who's like 12, I guess. An older daughter who's like 15 maybe. And then they have these two twins that are like 4 or 5 years old, and then the baby who gets murdered immediately. The father is like this hyper religious guy. Like he was too religious for the Puritans in whatever colony they were in. Like they got banished for being too into the scripture. And they set up their homestead on the outskirts of this woods, and everything kind of just goes bad from there. The one thing I would say that the movie really has going for it is a lot of good visuals that stick with you. Like the baby murder scene sticks with you. There's like a scene later where she like goes to milk the goat and there's blood. For whatever reason, that really bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the other part? Oh, and the scene where the son wakes up right before the sun dies. right before the son dies, he like wakes up and has like that freak out, and he like spits out that apple out of his mouth. That really stuck with me. A lot of good visuals and a lot of good just good imagery. The other thing I would say about the movie that I think is really interesting is, again, because they reveal right away that there is a witch or a crazy lady out in the woods. As these people are living their horrible life, like the 1600s in America was just terrible. Like just like the way that they had to live in the like those drafty houses, that they had to build themselves. They had to go get water, just like 1600s life, like how hard that must have been. The movie, like all these creepy, terrible things keep happening to them, but like as like a spectator, you think, oh, okay, well, I mean, the goat being the goat that she's milking that has blood coming out of it. Oh, that's because the goat must be sick or something. But it's not. It's because there's a witch, and the witch has cast a spell on them. So like you keep trying to make while these weird things happen to them that they're unable to explain, you keep trying to explain them to yourself. Like, oh, the kid woke up freaking out because he was like dehydrated and they had let blood out of him. And but no, it's because there was a spell on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it might, like you said, like the beginning, having told you there's a witch, gives you a certain sort of perspective where you find yourself arguing with it and doing that. Right. Like you said, kind of coming up with modern day sensibilities as to why that could really be happening. Right. And then kind of going like, hey, wait a minute, I even know there's a witch. Why am I doing this? Right. But then you start wondering, you're like, because the crazy lady out in the woods, like she's the witch, but when you still watch it, you still think, oh, she could just be like some crazy old lady who lives out in the woods. But the movie makes it clear, like as it goes on, that nope, she's a witch. She's a witch. Yeah, I mean, you can still argue with it. It's not like you have to be a witch to kidnap somebody, right? And I think that argument that you have with yourself going back and forth as the movie goes along, and you can hear my kids screaming in the background. Sorry about that. I think the end of the movie. So I guess we'll just get into super spoilers there. But the end of the movie when the daughter like has to kill her mom because the mom is trying to kill her, like they end up, it's just a bloodbath. Anyway, she like immediately makes a pact with the devil to become a witch. I was like, oh yeah, right, witches are real. This movie keeps I kind of forgot about the mom. Yeah, she's very extreme. But the other thing I'd like to say is I thought that the acting in the movie was superb. I thought that everybody was really well cast and did an excellent job.
Um, the main girl, whose name is Anya Taylor-Joy. I'm looking at the IMDb for it. I thought she was excellent. The dad, who was Ralph Ineson, he really, like, I really believed that he was like a pilgrim in the 1600s. Like, he was full on, totally believable that they were living in this time period.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah, he felt that way. And you're right, that the young lady, she's a good actress. She was in Split too, and she was good in that.
Oh, I still need to see that. I was going to watch that last week, but then we watched The Witch.
Aside, let me say this: of the female actresses, I guess the actresses of the female actors, she's the best.
Okay.
The guy who's the main character, James McAvoy, he's fine in it too. But she does a really good job. Did you feel like in The Witch, they were putting a lot of effort into making her seem younger than she actually was?
I don't know. I think because the actress herself is like got to be pushing 20 or whatever.
Yeah.
They kind of make it seem like she's just now entering puberty.
Yes.
And so I thought that was a little odd.
I felt like that took me a little bit out of it a couple times. Where I'm like, they're trying to make me think she's 12 or 13. Why not just cast a 12 or 13-year-old?
Yeah.
But it wasn't her fault. I mean, she was a great actress in it.
Yeah, I do agree that it was a little odd. But yeah, that's really all. Oh, you know what? My wife had a question. And if you remember the movie, what was the deal with the rabbit? There was like a rabbit that
I don't even remember there being. A rabbit.
There was like a rabbit that they were hunting, and the rabbit just kept coming back, and we couldn't figure out like what was the symbolism of the rabbit.
I really don't know, and I can't remember there even being a rabbit, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, hey, listeners, if you know what the deal with the rabbit was, please let us know.
Hey, we could use your support.
Yeah.
Now, I felt with this movie, like, and I felt similarly with the movie Hereditary. Like, in general, I'm used to, and I guess I prefer my movies to either be kind of linear and build in a straightforward manner that's coherent, or to be broken up but to come together in a really coherent way.
Yeah.
And I felt like the kind of shape of it was a little more disjointed in both cases. But instead of kind of getting a sense that it didn't know what it was doing, it seemed a little bit more like it was just almost like a movie that was made in another country or something, where they were just like, we do things a little differently here. It doesn't have to be quite so structured. Mm-hmm. And not everything has to be overly explained. And it seems okay with me. Like I'd be okay with watching, kind of like with the Coen brothers. You kind of know what you're in for in terms of tone and stuff, and it's got its own feel. Yeah. Like this would be, of course, it's nothing like the Coen brothers, but similar in that sense. Like I'd be willing to watch more movies from them that have a little bit more disjointedness and sort of like things that could go down different plot roads but really don't. What do you think? Or did it even feel that way for you?
I don't know. I kind of feel like that the first two acts of the movie were really good at world building. Like this is the world that they exist in. This is the world that we're going to watch them in. You can argue all you want whether or not witches are real, but in this story, the witch is real. Mm-hmm. But the third act of the movie, when you could tell they're like, we got to wrap this up. I feel like a lot of it falls apart. And then a lot of like, because when the father starts accusing his daughter of witchcraft, like it's hard. You start thinking, oh, this is how the Salem witch hunt trials happened. Like it's like young girls that no matter what they said, no one would believe them. And then the dad gets hit in the stomach by a goat. He just gets, like every time you think, this is like, oh, I remember, like the stories about Salem the witch trials, like those girls were horribly treated, and what a god awful experience that must have been to be burned alive. But this can't happen to this girl. Oh right, witches are real in this world. So you kind of keep going back and forth with that.
Mm-hmm. And I think in the end, it's like you still empathize with the daughter because she wasn't treated well, especially by the mom.
Right.
So it's kind of like, yeah, you might be right about the witch thing, but she probably wouldn't have sold her soul or whatever if it weren't for you treating her like junk.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So the message still holds, like, don't treat people like garbage. But in this case, you're like, but they were right about the witches.
They were right about the witches. Yeah. So I guess that'll wrap up my discussion about The Witch. Definitely worth checking out. I don't think any of the if you haven't seen it and you still want to, any of the spoilers that we did really ruins the experience, because it is quite an experience watching the movie. I would recommend.
Not yet, but I am going to spoil one of the parts.
Okay. I would recommend watching it with the subtitles on, because otherwise it's like trying to listen to what's it, The Crucible. It's a play where like the guy says, where they say goody good wife, my dear, like all that.
I know the play, but I never saw the movie. Is it like hard to understand their dialect, or is
it's
it
like
super
that
quiet?
It's just that 1600s kind of dialect where you can't understand what they're saying. We watched it on Amazon Prime, and the subtitles were clutch, because otherwise I wouldn't have known what the hell they were saying.
I saw it in the theater, and I don't remember that part of the experience, but that's not to say it wasn't there.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
I might have had a hard time. But what I do remember, it was with the end. It just seemed like, and tell me if I'm wrong on my timing here, but it seemed like it almost took like maybe 5 or 6 minutes. Like the goat attacks the dad, goat starts talking, girl goes into the woods and becomes a witch.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happens.
Okay.
Like the last 2 scenes of the movie are, or I guess the last 3 scenes, like the girl and her brother and sister are locked in the shed for the night because the dad doesn't know who's working for the devil. And the witch shows up in the shed, and then the next morning the shed is like blown apart. The older girl's the only one there. The twins are gone, and the father comes out and he's like, "What the hell happened here?" And then the goat hits him in the stomach, and that apparently will kill a man. I had never been afraid of a goat until I saw that happen to that guy. I was like, oh my God.
Well, doesn't he get hit in the stomach, but then like a whole wall of like firewood falls on him?
That's the second time he gets hit with the goat. The goat comes back for more. And then the daughter, who just like watched the whole thing, goes over to the father and is like, oh my God. And then the mother comes out like with a knife, getting ready to cut her throat. And then the daughter gets the knife and kills her mother.
And then she's like, I'm going to get naked and be a witch.
Well, because she goes to the goat. They have this goat that the kids call Black Peter.
Yeah, John? Peter, yeah.
Peter, I think.
Yeah.
And that was a red flag the whole time for me, that these twins were talking to a goat, because I feel like if you were super hyper religious, you wouldn't let your kids do that. Like, it would be like, that'd be a no-no. But the twins are always talking to this goat. And you think, oh, they're just talking to a goat because they're children. They have nothing else to do. But then once everyone is dead, the daughter goes up to the goat and starts talking to it. And she goes, show me who you are, the devil. And then the goat starts talking to her. And then a guy with cool leather boots starts walking around behind her and tells her to sign his devil book. And to take her clothes off, and she takes her clothes off, and then it's off into the woods to join the witches' coven, which look like witches just dancing to metal music.
And then she just floats on up into the air.
Yeah, yeah. Her turnover from being a very pious young girl to being one of the devil's henchmen is really quick.
Well, yeah, I know. It feels like she just kind of goes, well, these people aren't doing anything for me, so all right. Yeah. But you don't actually get to see, and again, I don't think this is a performance problem. I think it's more of the structure and just not given much time to seeing her compute that, to really watch her think that through. It's got that, here comes John Grisham again for a third appearance. It's got that John Grisham feel where you're like, I'm not gonna testify. I'm not going to testify. Okay, I'll testify and it's over.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be a witch. Okay, I'm a witch.
I'm a witch.
Well, and I will say this about that in that sense, that's one of the things that Hereditary sort of has in common with it. One of my friends went and saw Hereditary and said that she wasn't really disturbed by the stuff that hit me so hard in the stomach.
Oh yeah.
But she said she was disturbed by some stuff that didn't really hit me too hard. So I'm like, maybe this is just one of those movies that sort of, they found a lot of different ways to really get to people, and everybody, there's something in there for everybody.
Yeah.
To get sick about. so I don't know. Maybe do check it out.
Yeah, we'll check it out when it comes out. Yeah.
If you got through that part with the baby all right, then just prepare yourself for something about 3 times as intense.
Oh, great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, so that'll wrap up The Witch, I guess, for the 3rd time. And it's time to start Midwest Matt's movie marathon.
All right.
Play the music, Sam.
All right, so the first thing I saw was 12 Angry Men.
Nice.
With Henry Fonda.
Not the Tony Danza one.
No. And to tell you the truth, I didn't know that Tony Danza was in that. I thought that who's that Martin Landau? Jack Lemmon. I thought Jack Lemmon was in it. And he might be, but
there's 12 Angry Men in it.
Yeah. Yeah, there are 12 slots to choose from. So, plot-wise, this is a movie about a jury trying to decide whether or not to execute a young man. And within the stuff they're discussing, I mean, it's already happening when you get there. And all you're doing is watching them argue in a room for an hour and a half. And which is, supposed to be an entire day for them. And 11 people are convinced that the kid is guilty. The 12th guy is not convinced. He's not convinced that the kid's innocent either. He's just like, before we send this kid to death, I really need to resolve my probable doubt.
Yeah.
Or my reasonable doubt.
Was this your first time seeing it?
It was.
Oh, okay.
It's a movie I'd been looking forward to for probably about 2 years now. I had heard some things about it and was like, oh yeah, I never saw that, but really got interested. Mm-hmm. I finally got around to it. It's really well shot. I'd heard this before and really noticed it and really appreciated that there are lots of long shots.
Yeah.
Where you kind of go from one person to another, and sometimes you go through the whole room, and as far as you can tell, it is a small room. So you kind of really feel like you're there. The performances are great. There's only, you've got a few characters who are staunchly, I don't know if conservative's quite the right word, but definitely Republican in the sense that things are now and their approach to things. And so and 2 of them in particular, 3 of them rather, are very much caricatures. And one's got this obsession with baseball, and it's really annoying. Like every line he says is some sort of analogy, like some sort of like, oh, that was 3 strikes, they're out. Like just using all these stupid phrases.
Uh-huh.
But I actually felt like for the most part the characters are really well done. The performances were great, and you get to see the doubt that this guy has and the things that concern him kind of come together in a really gradual way.
Uh-huh.
And I really enjoyed that about it. I felt like the writers they knew where they were going, and maybe they worked backwards, but they were able to lay things out in such a way that you can kind of transition along with people in the room who start to go, oh, maybe that's a good one or that. And it doesn't get ridiculous or anything. It's not like the guy starts going, hey, forget all the evidence. This guy is innocent. He's just like, hey, these things are really important to take into consideration, and I'm not going to say he's guilty when that's not convincing to me.
Right.
So I thought it was a really good movie. Have you seen it before?
Yeah, I've seen it many times. It's a great movie, and it's the kind of movie where you think, what's the best way to put this? the reason, like figuring out what reasonable, I never really understood what reasonable doubt was until I saw this movie. And the way the movie starts, I feel like the Henry Fonda's character has unreasonable doubt. Like he's just looking for reasons to question the state's story against this kid. And,
like almost like he just doesn't want to feel bad, so he's not going to put him to jail.
Yeah, he says, I'm not going to vote to put him in jail because I don't believe beyond a reasonable doubt that the kid is guilty. And as the movie starts, he says, he says that, and he's like, I don't know why I feel the way I do. I just don't feel like it. And everybody's voting guilty except for him. And then as the movie goes along, he comes up with more and more reasons for why the state's case against this kid may be shoddy. And then the different characters have stuff that they bring to the story that also build into the reasonable doubt case. I think when you watch this movie, you're supposed to put yourself in the position of Henry Fonda, where you're the guy who's like, I'm the one guy standing alone to save a life, but I'm not so sure about that. Did that make any sense? I feel like I trailed off in the middle of 3 thoughts. Are you still there? I don't think you're there. Oh gosh, I think we lost Matt. I'm going to hang up and call him back. Listeners at home, that static sound that went away was the phone. We're going to call him back. It's ringing. Maybe while it's ringing, I can come up with a more coherent way of, hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's pretty good. I could hear you.
Oh, you could?
Sorry, listeners. I put myself on mute for a moment so I could drink some tea without gulping in your ears.
Oh.
And I forgot to unmute myself. And when you were like, are you there? I was like, oh, shit, I didn't hit that. So I was trying to, like, get back to that part of my phone instead of, like, in my notes where I had the unmute, and it just wasn't working. And I'm yelling that I can hear you, and I'm still here, knowing full well that you cannot hear me. Anyway, I believe you were saying something.
Yeah, let me try and explain it a little more coherently. So, now let's just move on. Let's move on.
Well, picking up there, like, I think that, especially given what you just said, because I think it's a really good point that, like, it doesn't start out with the evidence sounding at all like the guy is innocent. I think in a way you're supposed to like Henry Fonda because he's kind of approaching things in a reasonable way in terms of, like, just being nice and saying, like, look, here's my concern and I need to think it through. And it comes off, he might not have reasonable doubt. It might be a little just a gut feeling.
Yeah.
But he approaches it well. And I think in that sense, you're supposed to like him, but you actually are supposed to be like, oh, I like this guy, but listen to this evidence. And then as they go through things, you're actually more in the position of the other people kind of being won over a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really cool thing about the movie. And also about that they do handle it in a way that is Henry Fonda's character just being about caution and reason and not necessarily being against the death penalty. Like, I myself am against the death penalty, but at the same time, he was trying to make real points, not just, about the trial itself, not just, hey, I don't believe in this, so therefore he's innocent. I thought that was really smart.
I think another thing that the movie really points out is the flawed nature of our justice system itself, where the people who are put on juries are basically put in charge of deciding people's lives, and nobody ever wants to be on jury duty. Like there's many characters, like the baseball guy in this jury, he just wants to get to the Yankees game. Like he's like, I don't care. I'm going to vote guilty because everyone else is voting guilty so I can get out of here. But what's at stake is a young man's life. And to this guy, it's just like, he doesn't care. And go ahead.
Well, and there's even a moment with that guy, and I love this moment, where he's like, all right, fine, he's not guilty. And Henry Fonda's like, no, you can't just say he's not guilty because he's not guilty just because you want to leave either. That's not a good reason.
Right, exactly.
You need to go with what you actually believe. And then, well, anyway, I just thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and even the ending of the movie, and spoilers for this 50-year-old movie, 60-year-old actually.
It's 1957.
Yeah. They all eventually vote not guilty by lack of reasonable doubt, but I think but you never find out was the kid guilty or not, and I think that's one of the things that you really want to know, like, well, did the kid really do it or not? And you're like, well, that's not part of the story. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, and you know, even in terms of that one scene too, with the guy trying to change his mind and the other guy saying, no, don't just do that. One thing I think that is really cool about that and kind of poignant now is that it's not just about winning. It's not like he's like, okay, cool, as long as you vote not guilty,
right,
we'll win, and that'll be the end of it. It's like it's more about integrity and a real process than it is about one side being right and the other side being wrong.
And there's a scene where the guy says, look, I'm not trying to be a contrarian here. If after everything we talked about, we take another vote, and if everybody still says guilty, I'll change my vote to guilty, and we can move on. And one other person says not guilty, which encourages them to continue discussing it.
Well, and even that guy says, I said not guilty, so we'll keep talking. Not even because I'm convinced as of yet, but because this guy still is unsure and we should really process this through rather than rushing it.
Right.
Just to have things done.
It really brings in question, like, how a group of people, like mob mentality of how people just want to get one thing done, so they'll railroad whoever's in the way.
Yeah. And another thing I love about it, and I'm realizing more and more as we talk about that, I really like this movie, like even more than I realized at the time, is that you don't find out whether or not the kid did it or not. There's no sort of resolution. It's like, this is the way it actually is. You're making decisions without answers about what actually happened or what will come of it. You know, they do say pretty straightforward. They're like, the kid does not have a good record. It's not that the kid's perfect, and this is just one of those movies where they're completely innocent and you can feel for them the whole time and just be like, oh my God, some accident happened. It's like, this is messy.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's going to come from it. And you have to make decisions in a thought out way rather than just based on, you know, winning and losing, because it's still going to be ambiguous later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good movie. It's a kind of movie that makes you think an awful lot.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend it.
I think it gets a little heavy-handed with like the racism and stuff in it, but it's for 1957 for them to even be addressing racism in a court case, I think is pretty progressive.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I think it's heavy-handed in a sense of like wanting more subtlety. But I wouldn't even say it's heavy-handed compared to stuff that comes out now. You know, it's more heavy-handed than I would hope it would be this day and age. But even, you know, if someone's thinking about watching it and they're like, oh, I don't want this to be too over the top, I'd say it's still better than your average, you know, quickly spit out movie by Hollywood.
There's a moment when the racist guy is like talking about like where he finally lays his cards on the table and he's like, well, he's guilty because he's, what is the kid, a Puerto Rican or a Mexican or something?
I don't remember.
Latino of some sort.
Yeah.
Where the guy starts rambling on about how everyone of his kind is a problem and they all need to be taken care of, where everyone around the table slowly turns their backs on him.
Yeah. That's true.
And then by the time he's done talking, he realizes all the hateful stuff that he's been saying. And that always kind of bothered me where like, but because it's when he's done his rant that he goes not guilty. That bothers me a little bit because somebody like that wouldn't change in a moment, but the movie's got to end, you know?
Yeah, it is a little too neat and clean. And also in this day and age, 11 people wouldn't turn their back on him.
Yeah.
And I doubt they would have then too.
A little production stuff that I know about the making of this movie. Did you notice while you're watching it that when the movie starts, much of the shots that you see come from an above eye level angle, and as the movie goes on and on, the camera gets lower and lower until at the end you're looking up at the characters.
You know, I wouldn't have put that into words, but there was a shift in how it felt. That I think did go with that. So I'm going to say sort of, yes.
You can really feel
it's an important element.
You can really feel how uncomfortable the characters are in the movie too, like cuz it's like a 1950s, there's no air conditioning. They've got this one little fan in the room and they're all like crazy hot, and there's 12 angry men in a room who have to decide the outcome of one person's life. Yeah,
you feel sticky. And you feel like you want to get out of the room while you're watching it.
Like there's a moment when the baseball guy's looking out the window and it has started raining, and I think it's Henry Fonda says to him, "Well, there wouldn't have been a game tonight anyway." And when the rain is falling, like you feel cooled down a little bit, and I think that's when things are starting to cool down in the room. Like tempers aren't as agitated, and the people aren't fighting each other as much.
But then they have to shut the windows because it's raining.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But you can feel like a release of tension in that rainfall.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the next movie in your miserable marathon since you were sick.
No. This was the 4th of July day.
Okay.
So this the other one that I watched that day was Tombstone.
Yay!
This movie stars Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, Michael Biehn, Powers Booth, and Sam Paxton, and Thomas Hayden Church, and Dana Delaney.
There's a Sam Paxton?
Am I getting his name wrong?
Bill Paxton?
Bill Paxton.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if there was another Paxton out there.
No. It's another Bill. Bill Paxton, Dana Delaney, and it's a great cast. I mean, they're like this movie is just like perfectly cast.
Yeah.
And I never really was much of a fan of Bill Paxton. I think for the most part, I like Kurt Russell a lot. There are some times where I don't, but I think usually the movie he's chosen.
Uh-huh.
But I felt like everybody was put into their perfect parts. And I don't even know what the guy's name was who played Ike Clanton, but that guy was perfectly cast too.
Stephen Lang.
Oh, well,
I'm looking at it.
I kind of assumed. So something told me you didn't just have that guy's name in your head.
I'm always thinking about Stephen Lang.
Stephen Lang.
He was great.
Who isn't?
He was great in Avatar. Oh man, he plays the Colonel.
Oh crap!
Wow, is that for real?
Jeez, you never would have guessed. I never would have guessed that.
Hang on, now I gotta make sure he's not just some other. Yeah, he plays the bad guy in Avatar. Wow.
Wow, he got jacked.
Yeah. All right. Interesting.
Good job, Sam Lang.
Really disappeared into that role.
All right. So this movie I've seen a million times. I know we've even talked about it on here a couple times.
Uh-huh.
I love it. It's probably my favorite Western movie. I come back to it time and again. And what was really awesome is this is the first time I've watched it with anyone who hasn't seen it before.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I watched it with my girlfriend and her mom and her dad. Now, her dad had seen it a bunch of times. I don't think her mom had seen it before, and she'd never seen it herself.
Uh-huh.
So, it's kind of like the experience of watching The Room, but instead of watching people respond to really terrible lines delivered badly, it was watching her respond to like excellent lines delivered perfectly.
Yeah.
Especially by Val Kilmer.
Yeah. Val Kilmer steals the show.
100%. And I mean, even Kurt Russell has some really great lines that are delivered really well. Like when Billy Bob Thornton's in this. By the way, you wouldn't recognize him when you see him.
He is?
Yeah, he's the chubby guy at the table that Kurt Russell walks in, is like, he's like beating people up and stuff and screaming at people, and Kurt Russell comes in and he's like, pulls him out by the ear. He's like, all right, youngster, you get out of here.
Oh, that's Billy Bob Thornton? No way.
It is.
Cool.
This movie, and like, that's a great scene. Sam Elliott has some great lines. So really there is a lot there, but Val Kilmer does truly steal the show. But the bad guys too, you got this huge clan of cowboys, and between Powers Booth, Michael Biehn, whatever that guy's name is that you just said, who was in Avatar, and Thomas Hayden Church, they've got a lot of like character and charisma to them too. I mean, they're not good people, but they're interesting. Oh, and Jason Priestley's in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's such a great movie. And watching somebody watch that for the first time is a great thing. If you can find someone who hasn't seen it, don't just tell them to go watch it. Watch it with them. Really? Okay. Because it makes all those fun scenes even better. When Val Kilmer's like, I got 2 guns, 1 for each of you. And you get to hear somebody else laugh at it because they've heard it for the first time. Or seeing him do that like thing with the cup where he's spinning it around like a gun. Yeah. Like, it's just perfect. So that's well, there are some okay.
Yeah, keep going.
So there are some things about this movie that somehow, even though these things aren't perfect, the movie still is. There are some montages, and some interesting things are done in these montages. There are a few decisions with things like slow motion and some montage shots that are a little weird. Like, there's one scene in a montage where by the way, this movie's about Wyatt Earp. It's about Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and people.
The OK Corral.
And where Wyatt Earp is like going on his killing spree when he's finally like been tipped over the edge. Yeah. And there's one scene where he's just walking at the camera, shooting at it. Yeah. It makes no sense. It's the dumbest thing in the world. I don't know why anyone would decide to do that. There's also a scene where he walks out into the water and he's shooting in the middle of a like crossfire going on around him. He walks out.
That's where he's going. He's going. Gun. He keeps yelling, "No!" Right?
No. Yeah. And then I think it would be effective without the slow motion to have him just saying no. But then, while a guy's pulling a gun on him, a tested cowboy hip shooter is pulling a gun on him, he's got time to go, no, and raise a shotgun to his shoulder and shoot the guy. I mean, they're like 6 feet apart. He could just blast him from his hip. Yeah. So there's that, and that's kind of weird. And then there's another weird slow motion shot where, spoiler alert, Bill Paxton, also known as Sam Paxton, is he's been shot in the back, and he is like sliding off the side of a pool table in agony. Yeah. And it's all in slow motion, except for the last like 2 seconds. It's like he's sliding off in slow motion, then all of a sudden it goes back into regular time for no reason. And it's really weird. So there are these weird things like that happen. But overall, the movie is fun. It's exciting. There's really not a whole lot of downtime in it. It has a sort of romance plot that doesn't necessarily need to be there.
Yeah, the romance.
But if it weren't there,
like, I wish I could watch a cut of the movie with the romance just gone.
Yeah, I do too. But I also I do because I don't like it. But I also kind of want to see it like that to see if the movie still feels the same. Like, without it, maybe it would just be too much gritty action. Right. I'm not sure.
Well, I think one of the things about the movie, or the Wyatt Earp character, is that he moves to Tombstone to retire. And I'm reading the log line of the movie where like he plans to retire anonymously, and then he gets drawn back into the world of gunfighting. And it's the story of a man. It's like John Wick, where like a guy who wants out but keeps getting dragged back in.
Well, and maybe she does need to be there then for that love plot, because it's a real story. They did get married, and at the end of the movie, he does get to retire and get married. So yeah, And that would be a little weird if she wasn't in the movie elsewhere. But it is definitely the corniest part of the movie.
Yeah.
Is the two of them.
There's a scene where they're all riding like off in the sunset. Like this during like one of the montages. And there's a wide shot of Wyatt Earp and his posse riding around.
Yeah.
And this is like a little thing I read on the movie details subreddit where the shot is like extra wide because there's 4 guys with Wyatt Earp in the middle on the left, and then on the right there's like space for 2 more people, and that's supposed to be for his brothers that are dead.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, one of them's dead.
Well, I thought both of them. Oh, because there's one brother is dead, but the other one is wounded and he can't go with him. Right?
Yeah, he went off to California, where he did eventually become a sheriff or something. Anyway.
Really?
But yeah. But yeah, he's not with them. He leaves on the train, and while he's leaving on the train, one of the cowboys tries to shoot him, and Kurt Russell or Wyatt Earp shoots the cowboy, and that's when it starts. That's where he's like, "All right,
you called down the lightning, you got the thunder."
No, you called the thunder, and now you got it. And hell's coming with me. You hear? Hell's coming with me.
I see a red sash. I fire.
I kill the man wearing it.
I've said this before, but it's a movie that on so many levels shouldn't work. Like it's so corny and so terrible that it shouldn't work, and yet it's so perfect.
And that's where I think the casting is so absolutely important.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are lines where I'm like, I wouldn't be able to deliver it that way. But good job, Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
You pulled it off.
The movie had a troubled production, if I recall correctly. I think the director of the movie got fired or something, and then Kurt Russell ended up directing half the movie.
No, he did a good job, other than the weird slow motion.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else on Tombstone?
Nope, not really.
All right. What's next?
Oh, my. Well, I also watched... Now, I don't know if you've seen this yet or not. Now, once I was sick, I was at home with tonsillitis. I watched Kingsman, The Golden Circle.
Is that the second one?
It is the second one.
I have not seen the second one.
All right. Now, you and I had shared this, I think, when we were coming out of seeing Spider-Man Homecoming, that both of us really enjoyed the first Kingsman, but neither of us are ever in the mood to watch it again.
Right.
And that, I think, was my attitude towards the second movie. Like, it was in the theater, and I'm like, oh, I should see that. But I just don't want to. And then it came on HBO, and I was like, oh, good, I can watch it now. But I just don't want to. So then I was sick, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna work on some stuff on the computer and put this on, and if it's worth watching, I'll look up, and if it's not, I won't.
Uh-huh.
So I put it off for quite some time, expecting it to be pretty subpar. But it was par. So,
really?
Yeah. It wasn't as good as the first one. There wasn't... I think they tried a couple times, maybe a little, like halfway, but there wasn't any scene like that big, awesome scene in the church in the first one.
Right.
Where, what's the guy's name? Colin Firth.
Yeah.
Kills everybody.
Yeah.
But the tone still had that kind of quasi-fantastical tone. And that was enjoyable. And some of it was pretty much a retread of the first one. Like, for instance, instead of it being cell phones that were going to drive people to kill each other and stuff, there's like a drug plot that's pretty similar. Like, it's very, very similar. And so, I mean, I won't say a whole lot more than that, but it's, especially since you haven't seen it, but that part's a little like, okay, this is a retread. And it's got those like Deadpool kind of effects where you're like, okay, I think it's on purpose that these effects are bad. Sometimes that could take me out of it a little bit. Sometimes it was fine. Elton John is in this movie for some reason. And I don't mean like he makes a cameo. I mean like he's probably like sixth build. And it's not good. It's not good.
Really?
But no, it's really dumb. It's really dumb that he's in it. Julianne Moore's in it. It's got the same people from the first one, and Channing Tatum's in it. Who I never thought I'd like, but I kind of like Channing Tatum. In spite of that expectation.
I completely agree.
I feel like he's got no face. There are no details to his face, and it irks me. It makes me a little uncomfortable looking at him. But otherwise, I think he's a good actor. I think he deserves some credit.
Okay.
I don't have much more to say about it.
Have you seen the 21 Jump Street movies?
I saw the second one, and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Oh, yeah. The first one is even better.
I've heard that.
Yeah. But those are the movies that made me turn around on Channing Tatum, where I was like, oh, you know what? I like this guy. I like this guy a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing I saw him in. And I was like, oh, or no. I had seen G.I. Joe, but I mean, the whole movie was forgettable. But then I saw that, and I was like, oh, okay, this guy's, I kind of like his, I like the humor vibe he's putting off here. He's cool. And since then, I might have seen him in one or two other things, and he's been fine.
Okay. All right, and then what?
Kind of like Chris Pine. I didn't expect to like Chris Pine at all. And I still don't. Like, if he's in something else, I'm still going to expect not to like him.
Right.
But then I will. Because he's just a charming dude.
Yeah, he wins you over every time.
Every time.
I love his Captain Kirk. I think his Captain Kirk is terrific. And he was great in Wonder Woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonder Woman's a movie that lived and died on the relationship between him and Wonder Woman.
I think it could have died without her. I think without him, it would have been less good.
All right.
She can still win me over just by looking at the camera like she does. And I can't deny that.
What was the final movie in your marathon?
The final movie in my marathon was Predator.
The original?
The original.
Nice.
I loved it. I love this movie so much. It's fun. It's pretty gritty. But it's one of those things, kind of like Jaws. It's perfectly paced. Where you find things out, and you get to see enough, and you get to see people responding to like what's going on in a really good balance for the length of the movie, for the subject material. Like, it doesn't get into any big, deep subplots. For some reason, there's a bit of a, like, oh, these guys were here on somewhat false pretenses. It's a bunch of dudes who are like a specialty merc team, I think, who are, they go on rescue missions. And Arnold Schwarzenegger says at the beginning, like, we don't do assassinations. That's why I turned down some other job. We do rescue missions. And then Apollo Creed goes with him against his will a little bit to go on this mission. And then they find out, like, oh, Apollo Creed had been keeping some stuff to himself. His real name's Carl Weathers,
right?
Listeners.
Apollo Creed.
Yeah. But it's not important, but it also doesn't really get in the way. Like a lot of those subplots, if they're not necessary, end up being big hindrances. In this case, it's just sort of like, who cares? All right, whatever.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. The movie's not about them being there doing political stuff. It's that once they're there, it turns out, and this has nothing to do with the subplot, but it turns out that there's some sort of creature from outer space that's like hunting people for fun. And so it doesn't get in the way of that. It's
a movie that it starts off as just a movie about like a mercenary team taking on drug runners and rescuing hostages, and then all of a sudden there's an alien in it, and it turns into a completely different movie.
Yeah.
It's like even the characters in the movie are like, wait a second, this isn't the movie we were making.
Yeah. They're like, dude, I thought we were only going to fight terrorists with guns. You didn't say there was going to be an animal.
Right. Yeah.
So, and there's some cheesy stuff in it. You got some key lines like, you're one ugly motherfucker, and I ain't got time to bleed. And
Get
you got
to
one
the
character.
chopper.
Get to the chopper. Yeah. And it's impossible to hear that without saying it back to the TV. I decided. And you got one guy who's walking around singing, I'm going to have some fun tonight. And so, and one guy who's doing like raunchy jokes. But I guess that's not really, there's nothing quintessential or whatever about those lines. But anyway, it's got cheese, but it's good cheese.
Yeah.
And it belongs where it is. And this is another movie that I think is perfectly cast.
Yeah.
Like, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger, he delivers a couple lines that are kind of like, ew. But it doesn't matter because he delivers the other ones perfectly. And, you know, some of it might be nostalgia. I'm willing to admit that. But I've seen some things that I have nostalgia for and can feel some disappointment. Like, oh, I kind of wish I hadn't watched it again because it takes away a little something.
Right.
This is not that way at all. I'm like, oh, yeah. That's what movies like used to be like. It's like Die Hard. It's great.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine it with other people. And I don't just mean Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, I think the guy with the glasses, Carl Weathers, Steve Ventura?
Shit.
Something the Mind Ventura.
Jesse.
Okay.
Jesse Ventura.
Okay, so he was great for the little bit of it that he was in. And this is another one of those examples of a movie where it has some imperfect elements, but as a whole, it's perfect for exactly what kind of thing it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not trying to be anything else. It's not a drama. And if it were measured by those terms, it wouldn't be great, maybe, because it's just not having that. But for like a simple, kind of mysterious action movie, it's totally on point.
It had a troubled production too. Like the monster that they had was a totally different looking monster for a while. Like I think they shot like half the movie with a different monster, and then they're like, this thing is not scary at all. And then I
have to look this up right now and see what this thing looked like.
I don't know if they're try and find it. But they went back and then they came back with the monster that they have with the dreadlocks and everything. And I guess on set it didn't look scary at all. But then the way they shot the movie around, like you're saying with Jaws, where the less you see of the monster, the scarier he is.
Yeah,
because I think that's the problem with the other Predator movies. I think that's the problem with the other Predator movies is you see too much of him. Like he's just ugly, and the dreadlocks look terrible.
Okay, so I'm seeing some pictures here. I looked up the following phrase.
Okay, I'll look
original
right
creature design. All right, I looked up original creature design Predator.
Original
and it looks
creature
like
Predator. Oh, it auto-completed it for me. Oh my God.
On paper, you might describe the same thing while it's got its mask on, but in reality, it looks like kind of an anorexic weasel.
It looks like a dinosaur man.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Yeah, see, get to the picture where it's standing next to one of the people, one of the combatants.
Are you doing
I think it's Carl Weathers. It's standing right next to Carl Weathers where he's got one arm. It looks awful. It's like a big salamander.
I don't see it. I could see like there's a picture of him standing in front of looks like a bunch of storyboards where he just looks like a dinosaur alien. Like if a dinosaur became an alien.
In my search engine, this picture is the 11th picture. But anyway, point is, it doesn't look good. I'm really glad they went with the crab face guy.
Sometimes it's better to go back and get it right.
Yeah, true. But that's it. That's all I got on Predator.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking us on the journey that you took through while you were feeling under the weather.
My pleasure.
Under the Carl Weathers.
Not the sick part. Well done.
Yeah, Predator is just a great movie. And I always want to watch it.
Yeah, too bad none of the movies with the Predator after that are any good.
Right.
Alien versus Predator was fun.
It was fun, yeah.
Leave it at that.
The new one that's coming out, I only have any hopes for because Shane Black wrote and directed it. And
what's his what are his highlights?
He did Iron Man 3. He wrote and directed Iron Man 3. He did. I'm going to pull him up right now. Shane Black. He did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He wrote and directed that. He wrote and directed The Nice Guys.
I love that movie.
And I think he wrote Predator too.
I don't know. Check and see,
sure.
because I know the guys, whoever wrote Predator, actually wrote Predator 2 also, and that was a terrible movie.
He wrote The Last Action Hero, which is a great movie. It's totally underrated. I love Last Action Hero.
It is underrated. I agree on that. I don't know if I love it, but it is underrated. I think people just weren't ready for sort of like ironic, satirical stuff with action.
Yeah, it's a movie that I think was completely mismarketed.
Yeah, if you were to watch it now, after say like watching a movie like The Other Guys, and then going back and then going like, all right, now we're gonna go a little old school and watch Last Action Hero. I think you'd have people in the right mindset for it. But back then they were probably looking for like another Die Hard or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, I think that's going to take us to the end of our show today.
Cool.
That's the end of the reel. All that. Matt, anything you want to plug? Anything you want to alert our listeners to?
If you haven't gotten around to that Perfect Circle album, check it out a few times.
Oh, I still haven't listened to it. I need to get on that.
All right. I'll just keep plugging that until you finally do.
Okay.
When your listeners start sending you messages that are like, watch it so Matt can shut up, then I will.
All right. I hope you enjoyed hearing my family in the background of this podcast the entire time. Sorry about that. I've got 4 kids.
I bet your mic cuts it out.
I got 4 kids and they're noisy. There goes one now.
Except for that part.
Yeah. But if that's the end of the reel, we'll see you next week in film.
Bye now.